if you remember on Christmas, we had a bombing in Nashville, and it's not
Yes.
a cybersecurity attack, but it had a similar impact in that it was adjacent to a data center for AT&T, and so we
Right.
had this massive shutdown of communications all over the state, or at least in a major part of our state. And it makes me think about what does constitute a cybersecurity disaster, and how could we work on the determinations of that so that we can have an in-place structure for a place for states to turn. Because that's one of the things that states have said to us, even as I've talked to other governors about this. People don't really know what's available or how to respond to the federal government, or at least interact with the federal government on an attack like this. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. What are the resources available for us, and at what point does it become a federal disaster?
Yep. So we'll be rolling out a relatively short order in days, not weeks. I think some very helpful public information avenues, so that we make more accessible the what to do, how to do it. A repository of information, if you will. But the thing that distinguishes one of the distinguishing features in the definition of a cyber disaster is that an attack in one locale can really have behavioral impacts elsewhere. We saw this in Colonial Pipeline, and it could really impact consumer behavior in a more widespread way than the geography of the attack itself. And I think we have to take that into consideration. I think this is a great point, Governor. We're gonna focus on this.
Right.
And sir, I think one of the other points that you raised implicit in there is what is the playbook when we have one of these significant incidents, particularly for small governments, counties, et cetera, that don't necessarily have strong depth of resources to respond? What do the playbooks look like? And I think that's something that we can take on to work with at the state level. What does the playbook look like? How do they engage with state level capabilities? How do they engage with federal level capabilities? And how do we all come together to provide support to them?
And if I may add two specific points to that, Governor, to your point about the thresholds and the Secretary's point, a lesson learned on our end in the wake of the Colonial Pipeline incident was, what is the transition from the cyber incident to an impact that is non-cyber? So over the weekend, while it was still a cyber incident, by Monday, here within the department, it had flipped and had focused on CBP and FEMA with respect to the Stafford Act and our other capabilities at the department, and where those transition points and how to think through those, which goes to the playbook point. And then second, in the wake of the Colonial Pipeline incident, we issued a new security directive through TSA and now require reporting within 12 hours of incidents. And there was some pushback on the tight reporting of 12 hours. But the reason for that was that in the immediate aftermath of the incident, our concern very quickly became the public's reaction to the reporting of the incident and a potential run on the gas station that was disconnected from the actual impact of the incident. So for us as decision makers and you in your respective roles, the communications aspect and how the population will actually respond became a key aspect, which is why that short reporting requirement came to pass, so that we would have visibility, to reiterate the Secretary's point.
It's a good point you make, thinking about that and the response that the public has. I spoke with a neighboring governor at the onset of the Colonial Pipeline, and part of our conversation was declaring an emergency or not, because of the impact that declaring an emergency has on the public's perception of what's happening. So, communicating what was happening with the Colonial Pipeline incident was really important with regard to the run on the pumps. And so as we think through a protocol or the the points at which we make decisions going forward, we ought to think that through.